Previously on X-Men.
There were so many ways this thing could have fallen apart so many times. And it just, somehow, everything comes together magically. And I think this is one of those projects where that happened.
In fact, there was a day after we designed everything and we were storyboarding and we're a month and a half in. Suddenly we get a call from Marvel saying, they can't look like Jim Lee characters. Start from scratch. And we said, wait a minute. No. These are the right ones for animation. We looked at everybody, and this is the best. No, end of discussion. We're Marvel. You change it.
Of course not.
And so Will Mineo, to his credit, he did a redesign of them, making them look like really bad Hanna-Barbera characters. And set those in seriously.
With a straight face.
With a straight face, and said, okay, here's another look. And it freaked everybody out so bad that they pulled back. Well, the reason Marvel done that, Jim Lee and the other guys had just left to form Image. And so they didn't want, even though it was right for the show, from a business or a petty standpoint, they didn't want to support this artist who just left them. And so they were willing to just screw up the show to not have it look like Jim Lee work. And then they saw how bad it could look, and they said, okay, fine. But that could have happened.
Did you grow up in Canada? Were you alive in the 90s? Did you love YTV? Yeah, you did. With Jim Lee, it just, everything was just kind of, I don't know, it's kind of like punk rock. Like, they'd wear their outfits, but they wear trench coats over it. Superhero cartoons can look very corny, but for some reason, even though they're bright yellow spandex, it still, for some reason, looks so cool. Yeah. It's
funny you mentioned punk rock. X-Men was scheduled to come out at the same time as Batman the Animated Series from Warner Brothers, and they had a little earlier development time. They hit the September rollout and had the full support of a single studio. Sidney Iwaner had the way he referred to X-Men versus Batman, because we always had a friendly rivalry, going back and forth on that.
Yeah, he called. They said Batman's cool jazz and X-Men's a garage band.
It's like, okay. I buy that. That works for me.
And we very specifically, the Will and Larry had done some boards for Batman, because, as I say, it started about a year earlier, the pre-production, and so they knew how beautiful it was and how we didn't have that budget. So they very specifically said, we're going to have at least 50% more shots per minute than Batman does, because Batman, you can linger on these beautiful images and ease through them, and we have to go bam, 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 because if people look too closely, they're going to see that we did this on a budget. And that was part of the X-Men energy, and it's part of what makes it viewable now, whereas a lot of shows from back then seemed too slow.
Speaking of this Batman and X-Men rivalry, not only is Batman kind of like an isolated figure that reluctantly has sidekicks sometimes, X-Men was completely a family and relied on each other, but also Batman was primarily set to fight crime in the night, in the dark, and X-Men were in these bright colors in the middle of the day. They were loud and vibrant, and Batman was dark and elusive. Interesting you say that, is that in the beginning of Batman, the score comes in very slow. Dun, 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 dun. And, so you see some guys happen, and then eventually some stuff happens. From the first frame of that opening X-Men, the animated series, all of a sudden you see like this plane coming in, these women flying through the sky, and it zooms into the cockpit, into Cyclops' laser, and bang, it is on. How long did it take to get that theme together? Between the music and the visuals and the stimulation that you feel immediately. How did that come about?
Well, and I want to also jump in. Let's go back and remember, the X-Men were an unknown quantity.
Yeah.
There were people out there who could, oh yeah, I've heard about the X-Men, and some, oh yeah, I've heard about Wolverine. They had nowhere near the identification of, say, Batman or Superman. People just didn't know about them.
Yeah, so that 1 minute had to introduce everybody too and get you the sense of what mutants were. On the two sides of it, the visuals and the music. On the visual side, Larry and Will were so brilliant. That opening sequence was basically like 4 days work. Larry did
intense work.
Larry did a 1 minute storyboard of what he thought the opening should look like. He showed it to Margaret Lash. He said, we don't see the characters enough. She had 3 or 4 issues with it. It wasn't quite right yet. Will did a polish on it and handed it in, and that was basically what you saw. those two guys, each put about 2 days into it, and you get that incredible opening where you meet everybody, and the whole world is set up. There's no dialogue. 2 or 3 things. They wanted, Stan Lee was pushed to have dialogue. Him doing, hello, true believers, you're not going to believe these crazy alien people that are the X-Men. So he had pushed for that and gotten Fox to agree to that, and we had to talk them out of it. And then on the music side, that was everybody involved torturing this poor composer for like 20, 25 passes at making that more and more intense, more layered, more, faster, more, no, come on, that's not X-Men enough. The guy is Ron Wasserman. He doesn't get credit on TV because the people that own the show, Saban people, Shuki Levy, took credit for the music. And I think it was, a business thing.
And he was a work for hire. He was getting paid per week every day.
He was just an employee there at Saban, and he wrote it. This guy gets no royalties at all. He wrote the X-Men music and the Power Rangers music.
Get out.
That ought to be enough right there, right?
This one guy did those 2 things and doesn't make a penny back end off of either one.
Yeah.
What the hell? Chuck Lorre wrote the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles one, and I'm pretty sure he cashed a few checks off that.
Yeah. So Ron Wasserman, bless his heart, he could have completed something in a single day, and he would have gotten the same amount of money. Instead,
our guys kept
doing it.
We worked him over for a couple of weeks of hard work and sweat, and finally it came out right. But so that there's in the book there's a whole chapter just on doing the opening, because the opening is so tight and it's such a good introduction to the show. That
you meet every character you need to meet. You get a sense of what their abilities are and
what the problems are.
It's kind of like 90210, like, but dangerous. What has the fan reaction been to this book so far? Because I'm imagining it's been pretty for those true fans who have bought this must be the ultimate special feature that you never get to see in the DVDs and Blu-rays. Like, this must be something.
I gotta say, working in the way we do and doing what we do, being writers, we tend to be alone in front of a desk or with a notepad or a laptop in our laps, and we don't get out there all much. And by the time X-Men was already over and on, fortunately we were on to other projects at that point. But then realizing sort of the groundswell, about 5 years ago, I was kind of poking him, saying, no one's writing about the X-Men like they are other shows that are coming up with their anniversaries. So if you don't do it, it may not get done.
Right. And so we did the book, and it's been great. We've been to a couple dozen cons, and the response is wonderful. I mean,
and that's been amazing.
And just all the online back and forth. Julia's online 3 or 4 hours a day, just reacting to people that have questions about the series.
Thanks, by the way.
About the book. And the good part was we got to tell the whole story exactly the way we wanted to. We interviewed everybody, all the artists and writers and executives and people that really made the show. The one thing that we'd hoped at the time, Marvel and Fox, who each owned about half the rights to the X-Men, were not merged when this book came out. So neither one of them wanted to talk to us
at all
or help with the book
about
at all.
anything.
So this was just all on us. This was just all picking stuff out of our files out of the garage and making the book happen. But luckily, we had everything. There's a wonderful 10-page interview with Len Wein, who's since passed.
The creator of Wolverine.
I got to bring that up. That must have been so cool. I saw that he wrote the episode where he meets Lady Deathstrike in the sewer and they're fighting the extraterrestrial being.
Yuriko, no.
The Yuriko you knew no longer exists. I am Lady Deathstrike now, a living weapon of revenge!
The fact you had the co-creator of Wolverine writing on your show, that's amazing.
Yeah, no, it was weird for me because I was thrown into doing this. As I said, I didn't know the books that well.
Yeah.
And we frantically got the first season done and we're done. Just when I'm getting told that there's going to be a second season and I need to start talking to writers, this guy pulls me aside and said, Len Wein's out here. He's written a couple things for animation because not a lot of comic book people have. It's a co-creator of Wolverine and Storm, Colossus, all these people. The guy who's basically responsible for this group of X-Men. And he's here. Oh, damn. so I call him and I said, Len, you don't know me, but we just did a season of X-Men, and I understand that, and I'm really sorry, I didn't realize you were out here. I would have offered you an assignment. He said, there's no reason you should know who I am or that I was available. I'd love to write for the show. So he was the easiest guy to work on the show. No sense of, of arrogance or entitlement, just, how can I do a good episode for your
Just
for your
amazing.
show? And I'm doing 4 of them, and just he's great. He's the nicest man you ever want to meet, and he understood this business so well. And as I say, he's got the longest interview in the book, something like 11 pages, because he's there from the time he was a teenager, in the 60s, trying to get into comics because it's all he wanted to do. Through working for us, he had a wonderful life, a wonderful experience, and just full of anecdotes, and understood both comics and animation the way most people don't.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's incredible. Would you mind if I read you some fan questions?
Sure.
All right. Will DeConto, he asked a whole bunch of questions. Were there storylines from the comics that you wanted to adapt but couldn't?
We were pretty fortunate.
No.
Okay, short answer.
Yeah, it was a case of some writers knew the books really well, others didn't, and people would just pitch story ideas, and whatever were the stories we liked best got produced. And if they happened to be closely connected to an issue, then it was, and if it didn't, it didn't. So there was no on the supervisory writing side, there was no agenda to try to get any one issue in.
His question number 2 is, was there any story or characters the network or Marvel forbid you to use?
Well, not forbid, but the 2 things there with the wedding between Jean and Scott, that caused a huge amount of conflict because Marvel was just not prepared to have that happen in the comic book world yet. But that was a big sticking point at one point that I can recall. And then the whole thing with Morph was your decision to come up with a character.
Right. Yeah. That was we had and we asked the people that really knew Marvel best, Larry Houston and I think Bob Harris. I think Larry picked it out. Said we need to kill a character to kill someone to sacrifice himself so that so that we know it's stuff being an X-Men. And Larry suggested 4 or 5, but the one just jumped out at me. It was called Changeling, and because he'd been only in 3 or 4 issues, and he'd sacrificed himself to save Charles Xavier. And he's a shapeshifter, and he's fun. Okay, so we wrote the story. Actually, at the very beginning, it was going to be Thunderbird. Thunderbird was going to be a character early on. He was listed. Okay, because he was one of the 1975 new X-Men. And we wrote the first story and killed Thunderbird. And then somebody looked and said, wait a minute, it's the only Native American character you've got here. You don't want him killing him. Okay, so right. So that's when we tried to find somebody else, came up with Changeling, wrote in Changeling, I think voiced it as Changeling, or about to record it, and then the lawyer stepped in and said, there's a DC character named Changeling, you got to change the name. And it was, ours was first. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, Marvel had it first.
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
There could be a lawsuit.
Yeah.
So we just changed his name to Morph. So that's how Morph got in there, because no, you can't kill Thunderbird, and no, you can't use Changeling.
And if you watch the final few seconds of the introduction, when the 2 sides are charging at each other, they designed Thunderbird. So that's his
evil brother Warpath running
on the bad side, which is why he's on that side.
Because
okay,
that's why he's there.
I didn't know about Warpath. I was like, what's Thunderbird's problem?
There you go, exactly. But now you know.
Yeah,
now you know. The more I'm learning so much today. Mr. Jason Hattrick, one of the smartest dudes I know. The X-Men comics became very complex and covered some very serious topics. subjects like racism, discrimination. How did you find the balance between being true to the spirit of the comics as a vehicle for those lessons that are important for children to learn, while also keeping the show accessible to kids?
That's a big, deep question. I think that goes to what the X-Men themselves are, as far as what the core of the story of who the X-Men are, a persecuted group who by becoming a family together, choose to try and work with the people who are attempting to persecute them.
All the spectacle is built in to these characters. So making it accessible is focusing on the personal stories, focusing on the characters first and the message second. I cared much more about Beast's feelings than I did about the Friends of Humanity's bigotry in that episode. And if you can go into that episode with the writing and the artwork focusing on that, then the message comes through in the background.
Personal question. You were mentioning before that some of the episodes had to be aired out of order because the animation didn't come back on time. Yeah. What were those episodes? Because I only know the DVD probably corrected version of said storylines.
Yeah, we've got in the right order in the book.
A master list.
Yeah, and it even makes a reference to how they're listed in the DVD, so you'll know how to. The single most important one, I mean, some of them didn't matter that much if they were out of order. Like the Mojo one could come out of nowhere.
It's a standalone.
You could play that anywhere. But there was one right after the Phoenix Saga.
Phoenix or Dark Phoenix?
The Phoenix, not the Dark Phoenix.
Not the Dark Phoenix.
Phoenix Saga, 5-parter, and Jean sacrifices herself for the good of the universe and goes off into the sun, and it looks like she is toast. And they all hang their heads, and Jean's dead. The opening of the next episode was supposed to it's called No Mutant is an Island. It was supposed to be the next one you saw. It's where it opens up with a memorial service on the grounds of the mansion for Jean. And everybody says a little something. And Cyclops is so upset and so full of grief that he leaves the X-Men.
I was thinking, sorry, Professor. I can't go. Not now. Not ever again. I'm leaving the X-Men.
Says, screw all of you people. I'm done with all this.
Don't you get it? I'm sick of the responsibility. I'm sick of being den mother to a bunch of quibbling children. I can't do it anymore. Most of all, I'm sick of caring. I cared for Jean. Look where that got me.
And he goes back to his small town where he grew up in an orphanage, and he has a personal drama. And at the end of the episode, he gets a call from the X-Men. They've sensed Jean's presence somewhere. She's alive. She's alive.
It's Cerebro's autoscan. It's found something. She's alive. Jean.
Okay, seriously? That makes a crap load more sense now, because I was just watching this run, and I'm just like, she's back?
That one was 2 years delayed, because the Saban sent it to a new place. They did a god-awful job. So fine. We said, we're going to take it from you. We're not paying you. Yes, you're paying us.
I am learning so much right now. You have no idea.
You watch the end of the Phoenix Saga, and then No Mutant is an Island, and it connects.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
You'd think in later DVDs they would have like fixed that. You know what I mean?
Think so, but they don't talk. They don't ask us. They don't call.
Oh my God.
They never write. Yeah. The big risk that Fox and Margaret Lesh that they were willing to take was telling stories sequentially. Episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, the very first episodes. You were supposed to start those in September. They were supposed to roll out when Batman rolled out.
Yeah,
we had this discussion.
Oh, but so episode 3. But so that meant the show didn't get to air until January, and in the meantime, she's making lemonade out of lemons.
Yeah. So I'll have sneak previews. I'll have a sneak preview on Halloween.
I'll call it a sneak preview. And I'm saying Halloween, kids are going to be out trick-or-treating. No one's going to be home watching Fox Kids at night.
But they were waiting for it.
Wolverine cuts to the heart of the matter.
We get him, and we shred him.
Watch the premiere of X-Men Saturday morning, October 31st on Fox.
And it got huge numbers. And then in November, Fox Kids ran a, hey kids, you take over Fox TV. What show do you want us to program for you? And they got thousands of postcards in the mail, and the kids had picked X-Men again.
Here's one energy blast from a pro. Watch a sneak preview of X-Men this Saturday morning on Fox.
So they rolled X-Men again.
So they play those two again. And there's some kids that saw those twice, and then they're waiting for January to come when the season's going to start. And they look, oh no, it's the same episode.
It's the same two episodes.
You voted the television premiere your favorite Fox Kids show. Watch the series premiere of X-Men next Saturday morning on Fox.
She really managed to pull a rabbit out of her hat with that in terms of generating excitement for a show.
Yeah.
That should have started in September.
They feel great.
Like anything else?
Don't go away. I'll be right back.
Did anybody anticipate how popular Gambit would become?
No, it's amazing.
Because to this day, I will ask people, I'm like, hey, who are your favorite X-Men characters from the 90s? And everyone always says Gambit and Rogue, Gambit and Rogue.
Yeah. I think it was a relationship thing, because we do that at cons where we'll have a clap off. We have 12 or 14 of the characters, images put up and the actors' faces, and say, who's your favorite character?
Yeah.
And Wolverine almost always wins or ties for best. But about half the time, Gambit. And Rogue is always one of the 3 or 4 biggest ones. And I think it's this Rogue Gambit thing that just grabs guys and girls. Both sides like that relationship. And Gambit was different. I mean, that was we always had that rule. We try to have everybody in the team as different from each other as possible. And he just was a really unique and slightly mysterious character.
And this is from Kit Martin. Ask them why Nightcrawler wasn't on the team. I've always wanted to know why he wasn't on the team and reduced to random Christian platitudes. As nice as they were.
We just ran out of space. Tell him that he's a cool character, and we should have gotten to him earlier. It shouldn't have taken 40 episodes to get to him. But we ended up, including Morph, there's like 9 people to start with. And that was one of the real challenges writing the story, is that you can write a story for 3 or 4 people, and there's time to play out the action and have some development. And if you got 9 people, you've got like 15 seconds for each person, and you're done. And if we'd had 15 or 20 or 30, which everybody has favorites that they were asking to see if we could put in, it just becomes hard to write stories. If you'll notice, we oftentimes broke up the team where 3 people be one place, 2 people another place, and that let us spend kind of quality time with each or with a couple of the X-Men at a time, because you get 7 or 8 of these powerful beings in the same room. It can kind of become silly. It works in comics where you got 7 or 8 people fighting in a big arena somewhere against 7 or 8 other people. But in animation, it really just doesn't work. You're lugging all those people from scene to scene. It just you have to keep the numbers small. So he lost out on numbers.
But it really was important to try and write for each character, to write the best story for each character. And that meant going into what the character was, not so much what the powers were.
And looking back, there are people like Nightcrawler that I think it would have been nice to use more.
Yeah.
It would have been really fun to use more, but it just, we didn't really have an overall agenda. It's like whoever came up with the best stories. One thing we did have to pull back, everybody loved writing for Wolverine, so we had to restrain ourselves from making it 8 Wolverine stories a season.
Hey, kid. You think you're an X-Man, okay? Name them.
Wolverine, Cyclops, Beast, Gambit, Rogue, Sabretooth, Magneto, Cable, Storm, Professor X.
Man, and the merchandise that this show created.
You forgot some.
There are so many toys. So many, and they're so cool. I remember when the Wolverine claws actually come out. That was a must-have. Oh man, brings me back. Okay, this is so good. I'm so looking forward to getting this book. Like, I'm really excited just to see, because as soon as DVDs came out, the first thing that made me attracted to them was a special feature. I'm like, a special what?
Thank you. Yes. It's killing us that they don't have a set yet here in the U.S., because at least they have box sets somewhere in Europe, but there's no extras at all.
God. I'm glad this series was on DVD and stuff like that. But now that Disney owns Fox, and Disney owns Marvel, I mean, there must be some sort of easier way, synchronicity to make sure something can happen eventually, given the fact it's under this giant umbrella now.
Yeah, they're gonna start streaming it again soon, and we've been talking to them. Fans are desperate for a Blu-ray box with extras in it.
That would be so fabulous.
X-Men, a 30-year tradition that Polygram Video is proud to bring to home video. Keep your eyes open for these and more X-Men home video adventures. The one and only X-Men.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your time and sharing your stories, of course. Everybody out there, check out this book. Previously on X-Men, you gotta check out this book, because all this stuff that we've talked about, you are going to learn. That's just the tip of the iceberg to the plethora of knowledge that you can gain from this wonderful piece of writing.
Can I jump in that
Please.
We have a page on Facebook, previously on X-Men.
Mm-hmm.
We have a bloggy thing on the web, X-Men TAS, which is for X-Men the Animated Series. And on Twitter, we are at X-Men TAS. So please find us, follow us, and all that kind of stuff. And that would be great.
Yeah.
Check out more episodes of You, Me, and YTV on Facebook and YouTube. Sweet one-of-a-kind interviews with PJ Fresh Bill, PJ Paul, Tarzan Dan, the cast of Student Bodies, the voice acting cast of Sailor Moon, and much, much more. Exclusively on You, Me, and YTV. Season 2.